All right, so in this video, we'll hear a little bit about Zarin's advice for folks considering different career paths. So I'm curious, Zarin, if there were anyone who were going to become a professor for the wrong reasons, what would those wrong reasons look like?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, I think it, if you becoming a professor for the wrong reason would be thinking like, well, I got my PhD and I can't do anything else with it. Like, and for my PhD, like I'm a monkey doctor, right? Like essentially, there is no like, it's hard to imagine what another career other than academia with the kind of PhD that I have. And I think staying in academia because you can't think of something else that you would do with the degree that you've done is probably the wrong reason. And actually, you're the reason that I have a very open mind about like my PhD, because I not only saw you use your skills from your PhD outside of academia, but you also gave me great advice about how to think like a lot about not just like the academic content of my degree, but like the actual skills that I learned. And that is, I would say, for anyone who's going through a PhD program, to not just focus on like, do you know everything about chimpanzees or whatever topic it is, but to really think about like the transferable skills that you're learning, right, in data analysis, in organization, right, like running a field site. All of that stuff is a transferable skill, because I think you'll be a lot happier, right? Like I think you like, because I remember thinking, especially towards the last part of my PhD, like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I like? I have no skills. I just wasted 7 years of my life. And I think if you turn the thinking around, right, if you just like change the way you think about a PhD, it will make you feel better, right? It'll make you feel like you have lots of options and opportunities. And I still feel that way. Like, I mean, I really am grateful for your advice with that. And that's why when I think about like, okay, if I get tenure or not tenure, I don't have to just like find an academic job in Kentucky or wherever, somewhere I don't want to live. I can think about, I feel like I have options because I know I have skills.
Yeah, well, and that hearing that message and just relaying it back to the amount that with a PhD, you can choose to be a professor,
Mhm.
but almost within the parameters that work for you, right?
Yeah.
There are folks who like get a job offer on the other side of the planet and they're like, oh, I have to go take this just because it's the only faculty position I can get. It's okay to say, these are my standards. If
Yeah.
academics doesn't meet them, I'm going to go elsewhere.
And I think it's important to think about what those non-negotiables are and to be willing to update them, right, as you change, as your life changes, all sorts of things, if you have kids or not, whatever it is that changes in your life, to reevaluate what your non-negotiables are. But then I think it's also okay if you want to like, look, I love chimps. I love studying them. And there are some sacrifices that I would make, to continue to do that. And I think it's okay if you love it and you do want to go for it. And if it's okay if you do end up having to move around the world, as long as that's like, you feel like you're not stuck, right? As long as you keep the options open and really think about like, are you doing this because you want to, or are you doing this because you feel like you have no other choice?
Yeah, yeah, and keeping in check with that want. And it sounds like they're almost the want is that just like that passion for working with chimps, right? If I think about like the right reasons, the passion for your topic seems like it fuels a lot of the other decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I definitely think so. I think that's why for me, working with young people is so wonderful because it reinvigorates that passion. Like, and I think I've probably told you this before, but like even doing the outreach that I do with school kids and, young people in general, I mean, they remind me in many ways that like I have a pretty cool job, and like, wow, like you study wild chimps, that's amazing. I'm like, that is amazing. But like, so sometimes I need to have that passion a little like I need to be reminded of that passion. But yeah, that has been a real consistent thread from like 10 years old to even today, for sure.
Yeah, and almost being reminded of that by working with 10-year-olds and going and seeing their amazement
Exactly.
almost
I,
reminds you of like, yes.
I will say, I think it's also okay if you lose the passion, right? If like academia or whatever, this, if grad school kind of extinguishes that passion, I think that's okay too. And I think a lot of people who are academics feel embarrassed, or like they don't want to admit that they don't like it anymore. Like, especially in my field where it's like, oh, you hear people who say like, oh, I've wanted to be Jane Goodall since I was 4. And then turns out they don't like it as much. They don't like the field work, or they just don't like the data part or the writing part as much as they thought. But they don't want to admit it to themselves that like that it's not, maybe the dream they had when they were 4 is no longer something that they find passionate. And I think you have to also be like really honest and say, you know what, I don't love this anymore, and I'd be happier doing something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the part of thinking of my own decision is sort of that passion for me was never as lifelong. It was just sort of, oh, I think this is cool. And then okay, what is this asking of me in order to continue doing that? The calculus for me looked very different. And so
Yeah.
almost encouraging each person to weigh their own calculus, right? Of how much do I enjoy this versus what's it asking of me?
And to really like, think to really be honest, like, are you still doing this because you're either afraid of something else, or you're embarrassed that you're saying that you don't like this anymore. And I think especially for like once you do your PhD, I mean, I think once you have a PhD, and certainly some departments are more like this than others, but there's this expectation that you're going to go into academia. And I think not everyone should, and it feels like if you don't go into academia, you're failing. And I mean, we really need to change that way of thinking, that that's not failure. But I do think for so many people in my field, it's like it's embarrassing, or they're ashamed to admit they don't like it anymore. And so they keep going even though they don't like it anymore.
Well, and it's so interesting because that advice of sort of avoiding the inertia, I think applies to folks across different careers, right? Now, having worked with folks in different areas, they're still like, well, I'm on this path. I should keep doing this path. But the shame and the failure element of it, academics has a lot more of that, just scooped on top.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, it's really deadly. Like, I talk to people, I'm not going to name names or anything, and you're just kind of like, I don't really think you like this. Like, why are you like, and that, I think in many ways that's what makes people like not very nice colleagues to work. Like, you just get this sense that they just feel stuck and they don't really like it and they don't really know what else to do. And like, they almost, it's like they take it out on other people. I don't know. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, those people unfortunately exist everywhere.
Yeah. Yes, they do.
Well, and so I'm curious, we've covered a lot of areas. Anything else for folks considering, career paths? Any advice you'd have?
I mean, I really do think from even high school on, like up, I mean, even probably before high school, open-mindedness, right? Like complete open-mindedness. I have a lot of students who start, like, I meet them almost on day 1 of freshman year, and they're like, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, well, are you? And I really push them to think a little bit more than what they decided when they were 18 or 16 or whatever. And to really use, I mean, for undergrads, like, to me, part of the point of going to college is to have exposure to a whole suite of fields that you've never even thought were things before. And if you don't let yourself explore, you're never, I think you're really doing a disservice. But I think that is also true in grad school, right? Like, to keep an open mind, let the project take you, like, be kind of open to where the project could go. Try different things so you get, these transferable skills, like, say yes to certain things so you can try, like, what is it like to, give these public talks or do outreach, just so right? So you can get a sense. And like I said before, like, really think about the skills. And so that when by year 6 or whenever you finish, you have maybe more options than a postdoc or a tenure track job.
Yeah, well, I'm almost hearing having that like penciled in plan,
Yep.
but the humility to try other things,
Yeah.
whether to inform that same plan or to move to a different plan, right? That like following
Yeah.
your passion, but also allowing other things to come into play.
And then I think a kind of different piece of advice that I would give everybody is, seek out mentors. But remember, I think that actually everyone going through grad school and even beyond needs a team of mentors. So I don't think there's probably not going to be one mentor who checks all the boxes, right? So my PhD advisor is an amazing academic mentor, right? And I have learned so much from him, but he's not necessarily the person that I need advice about, like how to be a woman in academia. He's not going to know much about that, or necessarily how to be a mom in academia. And um, so, I actually consider myself very lucky. I have like a team of academic mentors. I feel like you're one of my mentors from like work-life balance kind of perspective. I have a group of peer mentors who are amazing, like this group of women biologists who I've been working with for almost 10 years now, almost every other week. And so you kind of have to me, you have to identify aspects of your life that you think you would maybe benefit from having a mentor, and then seek out the person for that aspect, rather than saying like, will you be the mentor for every single thing on my checklist? Because you're just going to be disappointed by that person and they're never going to live up to your expectation. And I think being aware that mentors can change over time and you may want to like add or subtract, or but that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah. Well, and even that peer support network, that's an idea you gave me. And I now have a group of coaches who I meet with regularly who are building their businesses. We're all
Yep.
helping each other. And that's just having the mentors who are at different places, even if they're peers, can be hugely helpful, right?
Oh, hugely. And also just a sanity check, right? Like there's so much like crazy stuff that goes on in academia. And then I like get on my call with my peer mentor group and I'm like, so this happened. That's crazy, right? Like I'm not crazy. They're crazy. And they're like, oh yeah, that's insane. And so sometimes you just need this sanity, because sometimes academia and lots of places are this bubble and you don't, and it's not like, it's such a very specific, right? Like most people in the world are not professors. Like it's a very, very weird, specific career. And most, it's not even like my husband who's gone through grad school, but he's not like, I can ask him, I could be like, that's crazy. And he's like, I don't know. Is that just Tufts? I'm like, I don't know. It might be, I don't know. So I do think it's a good sanity check to have like peer mentors.
Yeah. Sanity check and the support from people saying, no, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I think those are my two biggest take home like pieces of advice for career exploration. I think I do think like the job, like academic jobs are tough. Like I do think you do have to have a certain amount of grit. Like you do have to have resilience. Like it is there are moments when it is a big shock to your self-confidence. Right. And like it's partly designed that way. Like you submit a paper, you get reviews, and they really bring you down. But so you do have to like pick yourself up often and like keep going. You don't get a grant, you resubmit it, you don't get it again. Right. And you get teaching evaluations that are like, you should wear different shoes. And you're like, what? Like, come on. I thought those shoes were cool. There are all these like things that are just chipping away at your self-confidence. And so there has to be a certain amount of resilience that I don't know that you learn it. I don't know how you learn it, but it's just part of the job.
Yeah. Well, it's really important to almost recognize that you're going to get chopped down. And so having all right, I'm going to keep going because this is really important to me. It takes a lot of strength. You've got it. You're on that way. You're on the way.
I hope so. I mean, there are days, Tori. I mean, I still cry some days. Like it's not right. I mean, I'm not ashamed to admit it. There are really tough days, and the pandemic has made it very difficult.
Yeah. Well, and that to me, that signals that you have the courage to do something big, right? If you're staying in your comfort zone, doing things that are easy, there aren't going to be days that are pulling your hair out or tears, right? But like when you're really going for the big thing and putting yourself in it, sometimes it's going to yield big failure, but it means you're doing something.
Yeah, the high risk, high reward. I mean, I think that's a good way of thinking about academia a lot, especially if you're a junior, right? Like you sometimes have to really push like kind of high risk, high reward type things.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're near time. I'm thankful that we made time to chat. It's just so wonderful to hear your experience and your thoughts for others. So
My
hugely.
pleasure. I hope I can help people. And, and like I said, you've been so helpful for me thinking about my career. So I really appreciate it.
The feeling is mutual. It's
Oh,
yeah. Oh, it's fun to reconnect this way.
yeah.
So thanks also to folks who are watching at this point who have made it through. If you want to learn more about working with me, you can check out the links, subscribe. We've got different careers coming up that are profiled. And then I'll put a link to Zarin's research as well. If you'd like Zarin, then people can check
Yeah,
that out.
absolutely.
Learn more about chips and what work you do.
Perfect. Thanks, Tori.
Hey, all right. Thanks so much. Bye.